So this video is in regards to visas. I've had a lot of experience with many different types of visas, but this video is primarily about Australia. So, visas. I'm pretty much going to talk about the visa that I use, or the visas that I was on in Australia, which is primarily the working holiday visa and the sponsorship, or it's a temporary resident visa. There are a few different ones that you can use to get in that a lot of people use. So let's just get right into it. Working holiday visa. So this one is offered to various different countries. For the US, if you are a US citizen, this is probably the easiest visa. Now, there's still some work that has to be done in order to get this visa, but the process is straightforward. I went on to the immigration website. You have a form that you have to fill out. They ask usual questions about like your background. The idea of this visa is that it allows you to stay for either 1 or 2 years in Australia. Actually, it's supposed to be a working holiday, so the idea is that you're working to help supplement your travels. Now, for me, I primarily came to Australia. I was all about the work. For me, it was the easiest way to get some international experience as far as me being a chef and being in the hospitality industry. Side note, if you work in the hospitality industry, Australia is like the land of milk and honey. I don't know what else to say, but we'll get back into that. So yes, getting back to the working holiday visa. It's different depending on what country you come from. If you are from America, and I believe there's a few other countries, I'll do a little something up there. If you're from America, you're only entitled to 1 year. People from Canada, Europe, well, majority of European countries, there's some countries that have just been added recently, like Spain, Germany. There's a lot of countries that it's 2 years, but it's dependent upon you doing a farm work. Getting back to the rules, working holiday visa, it's usually between 18 and 30-year-olds. Is the age that you can come in to work. As far as working goes, you cannot work more than 6 months in one place. I guess this is to kind of keep you moving around. They don't want people just kind of like sitting and, you know, collecting the checks, and, you know, they don't want that. You're supposed to keep it moving. Although, how should I say, I guess I'm just, now that I think back to it, I really break a lot of rules. But anyway, that's a whole nother video. So yeah, 6 months, and you have to go after the end of another 6 months. You can work anywhere else, but it's just the time frame is no longer than 6 months that you can work in one location. So this is one of the easiest ways if you want to start out, you want to move abroad. At least for Americans, this is one of the easiest places. New Zealand also has a similar working holiday scheme, but we're not talking about New Zealand. Side note, people from New Zealand are super cool. I think the analogy is that it's like Americans are to Aussies as Canadians are to Kiwis. Somebody let me know in the comments if anybody has noticed this, or at least in my opinion, it feels that way. So, moving right along, temporary resident visa. Now, this is also known as the sponsorship visa. This visa is not as straightforward. So for me, I only intended on working in Australia for 1 year. However, the place that I was working as my time, actually it wasn't even close to the end of my time there. It was actually about halfway through. I was offered sponsorship. Now what this means is that you are allowed to stay anywhere between, I think it's 2 to 3 years, or up to 3 years, but this is dependent upon an employer who is willing to essentially sponsor you, vouch for you. They have to be registered with the government in order to sponsor you, but Also, the other side of this is that dependent on your job, whatever your skill is, you just can't get sponsored like that. There's some stipulations. For example, it's easy if your profession, whatever profession or job you work in, is on the skilled workers list. So this is a list of jobs that are very in high demand in Australia. So for me, I'm a chef. And that's probably that's probably one of the #1 jobs. So I kind of got lucky in that sense. What is it? How do they say? Is it a seller's market? Is it a seller's market or a buyer's market? It's a seller's market. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, if you're a chef, there are so many jobs available. It's like easy to get a job like that. Like I went through an agency to start my working holiday visa, which I ended up paying money, putting on my credit card, which I later on realized was totally unnecessary because I was just worried about not having a job or just like going there or rocking up. That's what they like to say, rocking up. But yeah, rocking up into the country without a job. And also I was quite broke at the time when I started my working holiday visa. I didn't have to do the agency. You don't have to do an agency that places you in a job. Like, it's fairly easy, especially if you're going in the summertime, which for them, you know, Southern Hemisphere, this means like anywhere between November and I'd say January. There's a lot of I would even say October. There's a lot of hiring going on in Melbourne and Sydney, especially a place like Melbourne. It's like the food capital of Australia. Tons of hiring going on. The numbers in the city goes up. Tourism season is big. People love to eat down there. The food's great. The restaurants are great. So like if you're someone who's a chef, that's your skill, or even someone who's front of the house or has managerial skills, going during that time of the year is probably the best time to go. There's definitely going to be jobs for you. Yeah, I decided to go forward with the sponsorship. So it was it's kind of a process. It's some paperwork involved. You have to provide, oh my god, what do you have to provide? Bank account, proof of money. You have to provide well, at the time when I did it, you didn't have to, but now I think a criminal background or a police check is required. Your schooling to show that you have proof that you're actually educated in the field that you're actually getting sponsored for. In my case, I had my diploma. They like have pay slips from your time working in Australia. You have to have letters of recommendation from your employer. That's the process of sponsorship. It takes about 3 months to go through all of that. So if, for example, you start the process towards the tail end of when you're working holiday visa, or I don't know, maybe a tourist visa, some people have done that. If you start the process and your other visas coming to an end, they have bridging visas. Bridging visas that will allow you to stay while you're waiting for the next visa to come through. I'm hoping that makes sense. It's not confusing. But I went through that whole process and it was fairly straightforward because, I mean, I'm gonna say it also, I'm American. And America, for the most part, America and Australia are kind of like, they're like bros. So, you know, they get on really well. It's not really any issue. Now, if you're somewhere, like I had a really close girlfriend of mine, she's from Chile. Her process was not as straightforward. I think she ended up doing it. She ended up getting a lawyer. So again, it depends on, it's a lot of variables. It depends on like what country you're from. But if you have a good relationship with your employer or the company that's willing to sponsor you, for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. Now, the cost of the visa is, last time I checked, was $1,700. I was able to work out a situation with my employer where I paid it back like in monthly installments. But pretty much when it comes to visas in Australia, if you got the money, then they got the visa for you. As far as like if there's any pros or cons, I would say the only con to the sponsorship visa, the only con is if how should I put it? You better like the damn job. You better love the damn job, because I know for some people 2 to 3 years temporary residency, you know, it's not maybe a big deal. Oh, that's the other thing, sorry. You also have to have proof of health insurance in order to get the visa as well. So you have to show that you've signed up for health insurance, yada, yada, yada. So they just don't want anybody up in there. So yeah, the only con I would say is if you don't like the job, or you get in, everything went smooth, you got the temporary residency, you got the visa grant letter, and then you get in and a few months in you realize that this is ass. This job, I hate this job. I don't want to do this job anymore, but my visa's kind of controlled because of my job. And that's what it is. Like, you know, your visa and your job are kind of connected. And that, for me, was what I ran into, because it became a thing where for the job I was working, things weren't working out anymore. So at that point, I guess your only options are you can find another company, another employer that's willing to sponsor you. However, you'll have 90 days to do it. So from the time that you cease working at the place that it didn't work out at, you have 90 days, 3 months to find someone who's willing to sponsor you. That's kind of easier said than done, because it's basically you got to step out on faith and, you know, find someone who's like, oh, well, we haven't really worked with you. 3 months is a 3 months is a typical probationary period for most jobs. So like, it's not easy to find someone who's like, okay, you've been working here for 3 months, we're going to sponsor you, because it's a lot that the employer or your company has to do in order to like actually go through and sponsor you. It's not just a simple step for them that they really gotta want you. They gotta pull out some things, the stops, so to speak, and you know, you've gotta be worth it for them to actually go through that whole process. So that would be the one con, I would say. But as far as the pro is that this can sometimes be a fast track to permanent residency. Ooh.